Here at Bowling Green State University in Ohio. My current major is psychology, but I'm interested in attending graduate school for sociology and focusing on criminology. Some of my specific research interests are deviance and social control, as well as substance use. I'll be presenting my research on what is a school shooting, and I did an analysis of incidences occurring from 1999, around the time of Columbine, until the end of 2024. I do want to provide a trigger warning for this presentation. It will contain talks of school shootings, gun violence, other weapons as well as guns, homicide, suicide, and child abuse. So if any of those things are triggering to you, please take care of yourself in any way that you need to. And going along with that, this presentation is not meant to diminish the meanings or the effect of school shootings in any way. I'm just simply reporting on data. So to begin, it's very important to address the fact that the government does not collect data on school shootings. And because of this, researchers and reporters from my two data sources specifically are going to be from the Washington Post and also David Reedman from Idaho State University are the two main ones. But researchers and reporters have been left to kind of fend for themselves in terms of reporting and collecting data. And because of this, they are able to choose the incidence criteria that they think fit the definition of a school shooting. And Jessie actually touched on this in her research, that definitions are not always completely clear cut. And as much as it might seem like a school shooting is pretty cut and dry, it's not usually as simple as you might think it is. And my current research study is going to center on the empirical and methodological differences of the two data sources that I am studying. And I picked these two because they are frequently used in different literature that is studying the changes in incidences throughout time. Some of the questions that have guided this research project is: how have school shootings changed over the past 25 years? What is causing the inconsistencies between the data sets? And what exactly are we talking about when we say a school shooting? When I was reviewing the literature, I found that a lot of different papers that I looked at were looking at individual incidences and the contextual factors surrounding them. This would include demographics of shooters, of schools, their weapons, and other factors like those. Previous research has also looked at gun carrying and moral panics. And a lot of research is not really centered on the way that school shootings have changed over time. We always see in the media that school shootings are on a tremendous rise, but I didn't really find a lot of research that was either agreeing or disagreeing with that. So I did my study to kind of fill in that gap a little bit. Some of the research that I found studying the nature of the shootings themselves found that single victim homicides, brandishing incidents, and shootings with no victims were all increasing, and that shootings differ whether they are in an urban or rural setting. And as you can see in the bottom two bullet points, Reedman and the Washington Post are claiming that the incidences began to increase a lot after either the Sandy Hook shootings that took place in December of 2012 or after the Parkland shootings that took place in 2018. My final sample size was 2,275 incidences, and this is because I took essentially the entire K-12 school shooting database. And my faculty mentor and I created a variable called WAPO, which is essentially coding for whether or not an incident was in the Washington Post or not. Additionally, we created a variable called post-Sandy, which was coding for whether an incident was before or after the Sandy Hook shootings. We did this because this was one of the time frames that incidences were claimed to have been on a tremendous rise. We also recoded continuous variables that had multiple options for where they could have occurred or how many victims or deaths would have occurred. We recoded those as being 0 or 1. For during classes and inside school, it would have been 1 for yes, it was inside the school, or 1, it was inside, during the classes, or 0, it was not. For victims wounded and victims killed, 1 is going to represent there was 1 or more wounded victim or killed victim. 0 is going to mean that there were none. So as you can see, there has been a tremendous increase of recorded incidences since the Sandy Hook shootings. However, In the introduction slide, we saw that the Washington Post does meet that more traditional definition of what a school shooting is. The incidences occur inside the school, during class time, or immediately surrounding it. And based on that definition, the traditional definition of a school shooting, these incidences are not on the rise. And if we sort these incidences by the post-Sandy variable, we'll see that they have actually decreased by around 50%. When we look at the incidences by their location, we found that those have significantly been decreasing. Sorry, let me rephrase. Those have increasingly been occurring outside of the school building. And for incidences occurring during class, they have been occurring outside of the school day. Maybe they're during the summer months, or maybe they're on the weekends as well. As well as for injuries and for deaths, you'll see on the next slide, those have had a little bit of a decrease, but unfortunately is not much. That one is staying pretty significant as well as the same. So for my discussion and my conclusion, the main limitation of my study was the time period that I chose to do. And I chose that time period because of the occurrence of Columbine. However, that's also when the Washington Post started their database as well. However, the K-12 school shootings database goes back to the 1960s. So a future study could do a similar approach, but go maybe on a further time frame. Additionally, I think that we generally know the causes of individual school shootings. That's mainly a psychological research, and you can usually see why one shooter chose to do what they did. But I think that a society-wide phenomenon could be identified for the reasoning that the increase in either recording of incidences or the increase in the incidences themselves could be identified. A future study could work on that. And there is a narrative variable in the K-12 school shootings database that essentially tells the story of what happened at that particular incident. I think that this variable could be identified as well or not identified, maybe looked into to see why there are less injuries and less deaths, because they are decreasing even if it's not by a lot, and that is important. Maybe some of the prevention methods that we have put into schools are working or they're not working super well. Either way, we could identify this and improve upon those. And finally, when we're looking at what is a school shooting, that last research question, there is a strong dissonance between the theory and the data for this particular topic. And previous research has used the K-12 school shootings database and the Washington Post database. When they use the K-12 school shootings database, they will skim out certain incidences, such as accidental gunfire, or incidences that occurred on maybe a bus or at a school event, or something that was not inside the school building, something that was in a summer month or on the weekend. Those incidences are usually skimmed out. So they look more like the Washington Post database when they're done selecting the incidences that they will use in their research. This sort of incident that occurs inside the school building and during or immediately surrounding the school day is something that is more so an actual school shooting. And that does not at all diminish the significance of the other events. But it is a big labeling problem because the prevention methods for a school shooting, brandishing, or gun carrying are not remotely close to being the same. Some of it is a culture issue, some of it is mental health prevention, but it's not the same. And these issues deserve their own name so that they can have their own prevention methods. Going forward, these incidences should be labeled correctly, and the government should step in to help with this labeling and the standardization, so that these labels can find their correct place and schools can be safer for children. Though previous research has identified schools have always been very safe for children. This is my works cited, and I would like to thank all of you for listening to me, as well as my faculty mentor for helping me do my research, my fellow scholars for always supporting me, and my advisor for giving me this opportunity and also supporting me. So that's everything I have for you guys. Thank you.